Good morning, loves. Happy Sunday if you're watching this the day the video uploads to the channel. We've had yet more snow here. Last night we had some more snow, but it looks like we're going to warm up a little bit today. And so I'm just sitting in the quiet this morning. It's about 8:30 and I'm recording the highly requested full review of the Ritual Tarot. I have many videos on my channel talking about the Ritual Tarot and how awesome and amazing this deck is. But many of you have asked me to do a final full chat review on the Ritual Tarot itself. And so here's that video. I have been gifted both a first edition and a second edition of the Ritual Tarot. My first edition was gifted by a wonderful viewer. She edged the deck in a bronze tone herself and she wrote the card titles herself. My second edition of the Ritual Tarot, I was gifted by the artist and author Tiera May, and I edged the deck in black myself. So just a note, when you watch me go through, if you purchase future productions of this deck, it's probably not going to have the black edging, and I have not put card titles on my deck yet. That's actually on one of my little witchy treats for myself to do today. Hopefully that actually happens. But I was gifted both, the first edition by a viewer, the second by Tiera May, just so you all know. And let's see, what else do I, any other like brass tacks things that I need to say? Yes, I am going to put all of the information for Tiera May below in the description box. The deck is currently sold out to my understanding. However, there are going to be future iterations and there'll be future editions. And to my knowledge, Tiera is also working on an Oracle deck right now as well. So, you know, even though the deck is currently, excuse me, sold out, I still wanted to make this video for everyone who'd requested, and there are going to be further editions, further productions, and definitely stay on top of Tiera's Instagram and her website so that you can be up to date on all of that if you feel drawn to this deck at all. I was really, really grateful to the viewer who gifted me this deck because I hadn't heard a whole lot about the deck. I had just seen one of my favorite tarot and YouTube people to follow on Instagram. She had posted some photos of her working with the deck in various spreads, and I was really intrigued, but it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, that's a beautiful deck. And then this lovely viewer sent me this deck, and she did not, like, she must have known how much I was gonna love it, and I am fucking in love with this deck. Like, this is a wifey deck. This is like Tarot of Vampires for me. I'm just gonna say right out of the gate, I'm completely in love with this deck. It's been in many videos, as all of you know, since I was gifted the deck. It made my top 5 decks of last year. I'm going to be doing an updated top 5 tarot decks of all time video on the channel over the next week or so be on the lookout for that. But this deck may or may not, but it's probably going to be on that top 5 decks of all time list. This deck is really, really unique, and I'm about to show you some imagery. Let's talk about like first edition versus second edition. And of course, I cannot find the second edition guidebook anywhere. I don't know what has happened to it. I'm pretty careful with my guidebooks, and she's just moseyed on off. So I'm going to honor that I cannot find the guidebook for the second edition, but there are updates to the second edition. There's the very adored Lust card, which is included in the second edition. The backings are a little bit different. As you can see, here's the first edition, just plain black, shiny backing. And then here we have this kind of galaxy feel. In the description box below, I will put the unboxing videos for both of these decks so you can see my first thoughts and you can compare and contrast if you really want to dive into this deck. But there's a difference in the card backings. The Lust card is included in the second edition, and the guidebook, which again I cannot find, for the second edition is set up. It's a little bit of a nicer book, in my opinion, and it does include the new card edition meaning, and it's a really lovely guidebook. So I think you're going to want to keep your guidebook to reference it, unless you've lost it like me because the fairies took it for the day. But you'll definitely want to keep the guidebooks. They are not throwaway. You're going to want to reference it. Tiera references a lot of traditional meaning, but also some Crowley Thoth meanings. And she has this aspect of like opposing and reinforcing cards as well. And there's a card reproduction for all of the majors. And so I would say to you, you're going to want to work with the guidebook for the Ritual Tarot for sure. It's something you're going to want to keep and you're going to want to reference and come back to absolutely on your journey with the Ritual Tarot and with tarot itself, because it's a nice window into some subtle questions. It's like the Dream Keeper's Tarot Guidebook, where I think it's so powerful to reference, because for me as a longtime reader and as a professional reader, the questions and the prompts in this guidebook and the Dream Keeper's Tarot Guidebook, they really give you a different insight into the cards. So they kind of encourage working outside of the box with the traditional meanings. And I think that's really helpful, especially if you have a long-term tarot practice and you want to walk with tarot long-term on your path. So I definitely recommend the guidebooks. And there is a difference from the first edition to the second edition. That's not just like repackaged and no changes. There is absolutely a difference. The other edition is the second edition, comes in this beautiful box. You guys, and it has the bird from the Ace of Cups, which I'm low-key obsessed with, as you guys know. And the box is really nice and sturdy. It's great for storage. So there is that difference in the second edition as well. And I'm unsure of further editions, other changes she's going to make. I do know she has another edition that's going to come out with the card titles reprinted. Actually printed on each card. As you can see in the unboxing for both editions of these decks, I do think that that's an improvement, because you have to go through on your own and write the card title down. That's a little time consuming, and it is a pricey deck to invest in. You're running around $100 for the deck. But also without those card titles, it can at times, like, you get lost in counting how many swords you're seeing on the card, for instance, as an example, instead of just being able to be in flow as a reader. So I do think that that's going to be a big improvement that she brings. Well, and to me, it's like the only improvement that could really be made on this deck, because I want to be really clear that I am obsessed and fucking love this deck with all of my heart, like obsessed. It's almost at Tarot of Vampires level for me. So, and for everyone who's asked, yes, I do have intentions to create and craft a workshop for the Ritual Tarot. So be on the lookout for that. But yes, this deck is that special. I want to craft a 3-week workshop around how deep you can go with this deck. Okay, so I want to go back to brass tacks there, because I want to finish that before I get into a little bit more about this deck. So yes, so further editions will have the card titles. It's not really a big deal to have to write the card titles, but you know, it is just something, and you are investing in the deck. So the other piece that I want to say before I get into my thoughts and opinions on this deck in the full review is that this is an investment deck. It's an independently crafted, created deck. You're literally buying from the artist and author herself. It is going to run you around $100 with shipping, I believe. Again, I'm going to post the link to her website so you can see price-wise what you would be looking at. I have said time and time again, and I will continue to say this, I would rather buy one of these decks than 10 cheap mass-produced decks, because this is a deck that's been crafted with deep intention. And it's a very magical deck. And I don't mean magical hearts and rainbows magical. I mean like magical from a practitioner standpoint deck. It's really, really special. It's unique. It's different. It's unlike any other deck in my collection, even my collage themed decks. And I actually do have a lot of those, despite saying that over the years that I don't love collage themed decks. I've really shifted on that, and I have a lot of collage themed decks. This deck is unique among my collage themed decks. It's very, very, very special. And so to me, I would rather save that $100 and invest in this deck than hit buy now on Amazon 10 times for a cheaper deck, or I don't know, 5 times or whatever for a cheaper deck. Like, this is much more quality, much more of an experience, and something that you can really bring with you for your tarot journey, right? Like, I talk about this a lot on the channel. Tarot is a sacred tool. It's a spiritual tool for you. And you want the best, right? There are times when investment brings the best quality for purchase, and Ritual Tarot is one of those. So Again, like I said, I would rank this up there with Tarot of Vampires, with the Mary L Tarot, with my Enigma Tarot, my Da Vinci Enigma Tarot. Like, I have these certain hallowed decks, and maybe I'll do a video on that, hallowed decks video, that are just like the pinnacle to me of the art of tarot. And that True Black is another one of those, and that just make reading tarot such a sumptuous, multi-layered, multi-dimensional experience. And this is one of those decks. So I'm going to say right off the bat, if you're on the fence about purchasing this deck, I'm going to encourage you to purchase it. I know I'm not helping you when it comes to buying decks necessarily in this video, but this deck is really special and it's really different. And I know it's been super hyped and all the cool kids are working with it, but to me, it's one that actually stands the test of time and stands out from the crowd and is actually worth the hype that's been put out there about it. So the imagery is very similar in both decks. I'm gonna show you the imagery from the first edition so that you can see the card titles that my viewer put down while I'm talking. So the first thing about this deck is that it's a collage deck. The artist has handcrafted and created the collages herself. You can actually watch video of her creative process and her actually creating the cards on her website. So if you really want to geek out on tarot and her process, her artistic process, go check that out. It's really fun. Tiera, is also a musician, and her music is great too. You can check that out on her website as well. So, I should say cardstock quality the cardstock is a little less stiff in the newer edition, and I said that in the unboxing as well. They're both pretty slippery. I mean, I guess you could, I don't think they're satin. I mean, I don't consider them satin. I don't know, but I'm not like a connoisseur of the cardstock. I just know what I like and I know it feels good to me. The newer edition is more flexible and more pliable than the older. I enjoy both, and neither take away from my experience with the deck, the slight difference, but some of you are going to notice that there is a difference from the first to the second edition for sure. The card size, because I know you guys are going to ask me that. Here's the Line Strider Tarot to compare. It's big. This is a big old mama. She's a mama deck. She's like Kalima to me. Even though like we have all of this blue and these rich saturation of colors and tones in this deck is very much Kalima energy to me. It's an all-encompassing like mother goddess energy. Yeah, she's super sexy. She's super fire. There's a lot of blue that might make you think, are we going water or air? But she's a really fiery deck to me. I got sidetracked. What was I saying? Card size. It's so easy to get sidetracked with this deck, guys. Seriously. Card size wise, yes, it's a larger deck. So I have large hands. And so this deck is not a problem for me to work with. It's actually like the sweet spot size for me. Like this and my Oracle decks that are, this is Les Vampires here. So it's like a little bit smaller than Les Vampires, but not by much. These are my favorite sizes to work with because I get more bang for my buck as far as imagery size goes, and I can take more detail out of the imagery that I'm working with intuitively as a reader. So it doesn't bother me, but if you do have smaller hands, and I know I've talked to a lot of my viewers and clients over the years, and it does make a difference if you have smaller hands. It's a lot more uncomfortable to work with. I would just say be aware that you're going to have to break the deck in, and you'll probably have to adjust size-wise if you have smaller hands. So that's just something to be aware of. The collage work is gorgeous. It's not too, I love this image. This is like one of my favorite Seven of Cups ever. And I know some of you have asked me to do like my favorite versions of specific cards, and I'm going to. I'm so turned on by that request, but it's just, I need the time to be able to do it. But this may be one of my most favorite representations of the Seven of Cups ever. I fucking love this imagery. But anyhow, Tiera has a really strong, firm foundation in art history, in symbolism, and so you're going to see that the layers and the choices really affect how you feel when you look at the cards. And that feeling space for me as a reader, that's the marriage of the intuition and the structure of tarot. And that's where you find your sweet spot as a reader, and you're able to go to the places you need to go to for your clients. It's what allows you to go outside of the relationship's not going to work out into why the relationship's not going to work out in a reading. That's just an example. Or if you're looking at communicating with a guide through this deck, which this deck is really great for communication with deity and guides. This deck gives you that depth of being able to flesh out not just yes or no answers from deity or guides, but really specific messages and responses for you when you're working with that face of deity or that guide. And this deck really lends itself well to that. You've got this multi-layered feel with the collage work that allows you to pull out nuances of each element as well in a really beautiful way. And it's just everything. Guys, I love both editions of these decks. So this is the first edition that we were just looking at. I'm going to go over to the second edition now because I want to show you some of the imagery from here, and you're going to see some of the imagery repeating because the deck as a whole is indeed the same. But what I really want to show you is the Lust card. Now, I have a series on the channel of videos discussing the Lust card from a perspective of working with Babylon the Great from the Book of Revelations. And I also do reference in that video, I'll put the link down below if I remember, that Crowley has a lot to do with this card and this card's inclusion in the deck by Tiera as well. And Tiera references that in the guidebook. So you're going to want to read, especially in the second edition, the definition and the meaning for this card. But Crowley really has a lot, Crowley is the foundation for working with the Red Woman, Babylon the Great, the Whore of Babylon, and the specific spelling Babalon, as opposed to Babylon, as she's depicted in the Book of Revelations. So there's a lot of history, occult, magical history, as well as biblical occult history in regards to this specific card, and why Crowley chose to include a Lust card in his deck, the Thoth Tarot. And this additional card references the Thoth. As I said, Tiera references the Thoth Tarot repeatedly within the Ritual Tarot. So you're going to see that theme repeating. But this inclusion, the addition of the Lust card in the second edition, is what makes the second edition the ultimate version of the Ritual Tarot for me. Not only does this card speak to my heart and my soul as someone who grew up in a religious cult and my own healing journey, I also think it just encourages a reactivation of the positive energy of lust and the sacred feminine on our journeys. And so the inclusion of this card in the deck is, and the additional inclusion in the second edition just makes this deck even better when I thought it couldn't get any better than it already was. So I highly recommend, if you're, I don't believe the first edition is available for purchase anymore anyhow, but I would say go with that second edition or further editions that include the Lust card, and, you know, enjoy working with that card. It's just, Tiera knocked it out of the park with the imagery she chose with that deck. It's just fucking stunning. And if you want to know a little bit more about Babylon the Great, the Whore of Babylon, the Red Woman, feel free to check out that video. It has some research reference points that you can use as jumping off points for yourself in connecting with that imagery. So I'm already at 20 minutes, or I haven't even finished talking. But this deck, I highly, highly recommend. Now let's talk about where I think its sweet spot is in a reading. This deck is bang on, amazingly incredible for past life insight in a reading. I use it a lot for that in client readings. It's also really, really beautifully crafted for spiritual, magical, ritual practice. I mean, it's literally called the Ritual Tarot. In my opinion, whether Tiera had as, she must have had an intention with this because she named it the Ritual Tarot, right? But it lends itself so well to spiritual practice. Like, you get not just an ability to experience divination and clarity through tarot spreads, but also this deck lends itself so well for ritual, spiritual practice. And it's just fucking gorgeous to look at on your altar as well. So it's like, it hits all of those sweet spots, and it has the mysticism and the beauty of the dark feminine in it. It's not just the light aspect of the feminine. Like I said, it's very Kali Ma to me. This deck is very Kali Ma. It's very fire, compassion, grace, sensuality, lust, creative fertility, death energy. Like, there's no hiding from the death energy that's contained within tarot and the cycles within the Judgment card. Like, I feel like this deck, just works so beautifully for people who are walking a spiritual path that includes tarot as like a foundational piece within that path, like something that is core that you come back to. If you are a long-term tarot reader, you're going to be able to go in so many different directions with this deck. There's so much to do, to experience, to craft and create with this deck. And it's like, it's just ride or die. Like, I knew as soon as I looked at it, I was like, oh my God. And when I did the unboxing, I was like, this is really special. And then once I started reading with her, damn, like, just ride or die. Like, I can't imagine not having this deck in my practice as a reader, as well as in my practice as a witch. I think it lends itself very well to pagan, alternative, left-hand spirituality paths, bar none. It's right up there. Yeah, I'm going to do a deck list video on the channel for sure around hallowed decks and spiritual practice decks, but this is one of those decks. So you're going to get, you're getting so much more than just a Rider-Waite-Smith knockoff, which I'm not, they have their place. You all know I have many Rider-Waite-Smith knockoff decks in my collection. And they're great for readings, and you develop your own system with how you can read with that, right? But this is a deck that makes you stop and think and pause and go back and journal and do some artistic expression yourself and craft ritual. Like, there's just so much that you're getting out of this deck. It's delicious. It's delicious. It's, oh man, it's like Kali Ma and the coastline of Maine. There's just so much more essence and personality and just lust, to use that word again, and love and every emotion that you feel when you walk the shoreline of the coast of Maine. And this deck to me embodies that type of energy. It's so alive. It's so alive in its expression of the sacred feminine. And I'm not saying that the sacred masculine is not represented in here, because it is, but to me, it's very much a whole-bodied expression of the sacred feminine when it comes to spiritual practice and spiritual journey. So I highly recommend this deck, whatever edition of the deck you get. And I do think it's worth the investment. This, like the Nameless one, is worth the investment. If I don't think it's worth the investment, you guys know I would tell you. And I use this deck constantly as a professional reader and in my own personal practice. Since I was gifted the first edition, either the first or the second edition have been on my personal working altar. You can see the latest iteration of that back there. So these decks are really fucking special. And yes, I will be crafting a workshop around this deck in the future. And you can stay tuned to the channel and my Instagram for more information on that as the appropriate workshop shows itself and reveals its face to me over the next few months. But it's wonderful to spend some time with you all this morning. The sun is starting to come out. I'm hoping some of the snow will melt away today. I hope you're doing well where you are in the world. Let me know your thoughts on the Ritual Tarot in the comment section down below. I am sending you guys, as always, so much love and many blessings. I'll see you in the next video.